My name is Kevin Loring. I'm in Tlakatmuk from British Columbia, but I've been living in Vancouver for quite a while, and I play Wilson.
Cultch is Chachumhai, Histakshil Ehatis Uhish Lachulams. My name is Aaron. My First Nations name is Chachumhai. I come from the Ehatisit and Lachulams First Nations tribes, and I'm playing Vincent.
I guess I got involved with the project in 2011 in one of the earlier workshops at the Playhouse. But over the years, I've done a number of workshops on this piece. I've played every male role except for Vincent.
As soon as I read the script, it was something that I had to do. It was because as I read it, every time I flipped over the page, there was another echoing of my family story. In relation to the story is something I've been able to find my own sort of identity as an Indigenous person, and allowed for a process of healing that I didn't know that I needed from this story. So that's what's brought me in and why I need to do this show.
It's a great medium to get the story out to a greater audience. I think there's a lot of power in song, and I think there's a lot of healing in song. There are many residential school plays, in fact, but this is the first musical that I am aware of. I think that link, that directness to the heart is going to be very powerful for audience, for witnesses, and for people who come to see us. I know that in the room it's very impactful for us as performers, like going through this journey of these characters and the struggles that they face. For me, there's a lot. It reminds me of my community, so I think it'll have a lot of impact.
I think through the medium of music and just the work that we are doing on stage, that it does allow for that space for these conversations to begin in places where they haven't even been thought of before. Well, when we did the workshop in Kamloops, there are people who had no idea these things were going on at all. And so when this subject was brought to them in the form of a musical, it was like, musical and residential school, how are we going to put those two together? And so we had people who would go to straight plays religiously, people who would go to only musicals, and then people who had never even been at all, who had very little idea or no idea whatsoever of what had actually happened in this part of Canada's history. So it does and has allowed for that space to start to open up.
It does still startle me after all of these years of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and all of that process, that ongoing process, that we still have people who have lived in their entire lives in Canada or have lived a big chunk of their lives in this country who have no idea of what we're talking about when we say a residential school or Truth and Reconciliation or any of that. It's like the blinders are up, and I think that something like this, it just tells me also that we still need to have this conversation, as exhausting as that may be. This is a reminder, this is our country. Mm-hmm. This is our history. So a lot of what we struggle with and what we are dealing with on a daily basis today comes from the era that this play is set, right?
And it's grandmas and grandpas.
That's
not great. It's not like
aunties and
ancient
uncles.
history.
It's not even grandmas and uncles.
It's yesterday.
Yeah.
It's not like 400 years ago.
It's cousins. Like I went to high school with kids who went to residential school, right? It's not that far out of our past. I think for sure this play will have triggers for certain people, for sure, Aboriginal people in particular. But I think ultimately it is a celebration of survivors. And I think that there is hope in this story.
And then just being able to work with a bunch of other Indigenous artists. It's like, I didn't know there were so many of us. So that was also really cool.
You thought you were the only one?
I don't know.